All right, Natalie, thank you so much for coming back for part two of our interview. Part one is amazing. Absolutely.
Thanks.
You were absolutely amazing, and I'm really looking forward. I've got so many more questions that I think we could probably spend weeks together, and I wouldn't finish my questions with you. That's for sure. But let's jump in the meat of it. Natalie, we all have an oh crap moment in diving. Cave divers have many. Can you share one of yours, and how did you prepare to handle for such a scenario?
Um, you mean, well, I mean, one day I was doing some exploration with a friend of mine, and I lost the line.
Mhm.
I just was in a in a blink of an eye. No more visibility, no more line, and we were kind of far from the entrance, and it was really the first time that happened to me in a real life situation. And it's funny how your brain works, and I knew it was somewhere near the bottom, on my right hand side. But my body wanted to turn because and it's tricky, and I really love to pay attention to how the brains react, how the body reacts, and what to do with that. And then, basically it's really simple. You just go back to the basic: stop, breathe, think, act. It's so basic. It's so basic. And for anything in life, in fact, it's simple. If there are an odd situation, an awkward feeling, something that doesn't feel quite right, stop, breathe, think, and act instead of react. We're like, oh, yes, yes. I mean, I had my share of starts of panicking when I knew, like, oh, this is not good. Something's wrong is gonna happen, and I'm like, I don't want to be here. I would rather be out, having a glass of champagne or something. That happened to me, like, and then it's like, you know what? Worst case scenario, in a couple of hours, I'll be out, and it's gonna be all good. So it's really, those in those situations, like, don't react and act. And I remember, 20 years ago, nearly, I was doing an interview with Jim Bowden. Don't know if you remember Jim Bowden. He's still alive anyway. He was doing the dive in 1994 at the same time than Sheikh Exley in Zakatan. They were doing the world record depth dive. I believe he went to 993 feet deep. Sheikh Exley didn't make it, but Jim did. And I met him years ago, and at some point he told me, you cannot afford to change the way you breathe. You cannot afford to change the way you breathe. And that sentence, there was three he told me, and he was a truly mentor for me, because it was the first underwater film I was doing, Facing Darkness. And because of his achievement, because of his personality, it was really important for me. And that sentence is like, no matter what is going on, the moment you control your breathing, you control your emotion, because you focus on something really mechanical. So you don't let your emotions control you. You control the mechanic of it. And if you think of it in all scary moment, or if you let your emotions drives you, you're lost. You're just lost. Even on a personal interaction with others, sometimes you are in conflicting situation. If you let your emotions controls you, it's not going to work. But if you keep breathing, controlling, and just being on the fact, what are the facts? I'm not going to die. I just lost my line. I have plenty of air. Relax, do what you have trained to do. You will eventually find it back. And then I try to put myself in a robotic mode. No emotion. I'm here to do a job. I'm here to do something specific. I am not me. I am someone who is doing something specific. And that's a little bit how I play with my brain when I am in some situation where I know I'm not going to be that comfortable because of what is happening. It's like, you know what? You are doing a, a job. So your emotions, once you're out of the water, then you can scream, you can laugh, you can cry, you can whatever you want. But in this specific moment, focus on what you have to do.
That is, again, amazing advice. You can't afford to change the way you breathe.
Yeah.
Stop, breathe, think, act. It's such great advice, and that's exactly how it's got to be. You've got to take that time to stop, realize what's going on, breathe your way through the situation, and realize and think your way. What is the next direct action that I need to take at this time? Not
Yeah.
emotionally based. It's got to be mentally and wow, it's great advice for anybody in any situation, whether it be from sales or diving under an iceberg. So
Yeah.
that is amazing. So, can you share an incident where gender was seen as a disadvantage for you in your career? How did you prove those assumptions wrong?
What do you mean?
How did you? There was an incident in your career where people looked at you. You're oh, she's just a woman or she's just a girl. That's got to be a disadvantage. You can't do this. How did you prove them wrong?
uh, when I have something in my head or in my mind, I'm gonna do it because I've got uh, I don't know how to say that in English, but I'm proud of what I'm doing, and like no, I'm gonna prove them wrong. It's like no way. If it's important for me, I will do it and prove them wrong. Um, Even when I did that traverse of Montreal, and I knew sometimes people can get jealous or all kind of stuff, and some people they were she's not gonna make it, she's not gonna make it. But at the end of the day, I did it a bit differently. But I did it because it was really important for me. So I think yes, you can push yourself to prove to the others, but I'm not quite sure that's a good motivation because I mean, there will always be people to praise you, tell you how amazing you are, and other people who are gonna say, "Oh yeah, I'm doing the same." Fair enough. I mean, it's a point of view. It's so I'm not sure. It's a really good reason or motivation to prove the other they're wrong or right. They might be still right in their opinion, and that's fine. So I try not to put too much importance on that, even if sometimes there's some comments that are really awkward or may hurt. But and I can't. I'm not in their head. I'm not in their life. So I try not to put too much attention on that. And it's like, wow. But inside, sometimes I just say, "Watch me."
I love that. Absolutely. You do it for you first, but the all oh, yeah, watch this.
Yeah.
I love that.
and,
Absolutely.
and at the same time, it's funny because when I give lectures, sometimes I give lectures for a corporation, uh, which has nothing to do with diving, and I can see the face of some people like, "What is that small woman, a diving explorer, is going to tell me about leadership, about that and that?" And I'm like, and I can see them in their face like, okay, show me, and I'm like, watch me, you're gonna be surprised like hell. And I love that because at the end of the lectures or the meeting, they realize something differently. And I think what is excellent in life, and what I like when sharing with others, is like how someone with a different way of seeing things, a different way of approaching a challenge will improve your way of doing things. Because if we are always doing the things the same way, well, we might not improve a lot. Sometimes we are re-challenged. Sometimes we don't like always how we've been challenged. But at the end of the day, you're like, huh, never thought of that. Maybe. And then you try it. And now you go, huh, that's better. And for me it's like, when some people tell me, this is the best piece of equipment, this is the best, there's no others. I'm like, really? No, stop that. If you look at all the explorers, underwater explorers in the world, none of them is wearing the same equipment, the same rebreather, the same, using exactly the same techniques, because we have the personality, we have the environment who has an impact of how we're doing things, and we have the expertise that we develop with what we have. And just looking at how the others are doing stuff differently, just give us more tools once again to achieve what we trying to achieve, and no matter what it is.
Absolutely. So I've got questions peppered in through here from other famous women or strong women in diving that they were curious. One of my favorite questions I always like to ask anybody in your position that is just an amazing diver and really bent the envelope, if you will, of exploration. Christine Zanato says, "What was the loudest doubt you heard in your head as you moved forward with your plans, and what did you do to quiet it down?"
Um, I think in everything I'm doing, there's always the doubt that it's not going to work. At some point, um, there are so many adversities at the same time. I remember once again the dive in Montreal, and at some point you're like, it's not going to work. It's just end of it, and I can reach that point, and I'm the kind of person who can go really really down to the bottom and up to the sky, and I accept to leave those because they nourish each other. And at some point you're like, okay, well, it's not gonna work, everything is black, everything it's negative and all that, and you're like, okay, pause. You live those emotions, you let them go out of you, and then it's like, okay, back to the fact. Okay, this is not working. What we haven't tried yet to make it work? Do we have what it takes to make it work differently? And sometimes it takes a little bit of time to readjust, but it's what I'm trying to do. So, and for some project where you're not in the emergency, I mean, with that I had to go with the flow, so you cannot stop it, you have to go with the flow. And as you keep going, you need to find the answers. But there are some other situations where you try to put together an expedition, and you know how it can be really hard to put together an expedition, because not just the dive is the fun part, but you need to find the team, make sure the team is on the same page, that what you try to achieve, find all the partnership, find all the fundings, which can be a nightmare on earth, and do all that stuff. Then you do the dives, and then you do all the work after the dives to put together the film or write the book, or the lectures, and to talk about it. So the amount of work is insane. And before I start a project, sometimes you have that great idea in your head, and you're like, oh, what about if I do this? And you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then the second question is like, are you going to be able to be still amazed by your idea in 3 years? If that project is going to take you 3 years to do it, are you still going to be that passionate about it? If the answer is like, oof, maybe not, that's not a good project. So sometimes when I have a new idea, I'm like, okay, because I know it's going to be done overnight. And this is the one of the big doubts, like, okay, can I really do it? Am I going to be passionate? Is it really worth it? what is going to change in my world if I do it or if I don't do it. Um, because every project is a life commitment, because you're going to spend all your days trying to put it together. I'm working now on the fourth expedition on the Manicouagan crater, which is the fourth biggest crater um, in the world, and which is a hydroelectric reservoir. And I want to do that dive because if I go to the original shore, which is 130 meters down below, it's where some people were born. It's where the native people used to go for generation and generation, and they lost that land. So they cannot transmit it to the new generation. So for me, it's really important to do that symbolic dive, to bring back images from their land to the next generation. But once again, I mean, it's cold water, dark water, like black waters. It's far away from everything. You need to have everything. You need to have the boats. It's the logistic is just insane. But the same questions, like, is it important enough that I'm going to keep being committed to it? Because the value of doing it is not going to change the world, but it's going to change my world. It's going to change what I think I have to do in life to share something of interest, of importance with others. So every time I have a doubt about something, and sometimes I have doubt because I like, I'm not gonna find the money, not gonna find the partners, it's not gonna work, or yeah, I'm not that young anymore, and I cannot sell it in the sexy way that is, the things, that the way things have been done now. And I'm like, okay, so how can I do it my way, to make it work? And is it, if it's, once again, I think at the bottom line, it's always the same question: what is the value of what I'm trying to do? What is the importance in my life? Because as I always say, one day I'm going to be an old woman, and there will be that day that I will look back at my life, and I will ask myself, oh, you wanted to do that thing, have you ever tried? And if the answer is no, I will not be able to look at me in the face. I will not. So even if I failed, at least I tried.
At least I tried. That's a very common theme I've noticed with amazing women in diving like you. At least I tried. If not now, when? Or just go for it. Do it. Do it now. Don't let the doubts overcome you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. So, Natalie, our industry is really about risk and risk management. Tell me about the biggest risk you've taken and how did you overcome it and when?
The biggest risk. Hmm. That's an interesting question. The biggest risk. When we think about risk, we often think of technical or physical risk.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm not quite sure that it's the worst risk I took. In the sense that, I mean, yeah, it can be. There was some dives in which we went deep. I remember, one time in we were in China, with a French explorers, and with a friend of mine, we wanted to go to the bottom of that cave because there was a story. There was maybe a Japanese soldier body at the bottom, but the condition are bad, huge volume, low visibility. So we tried to go down, and we are at 110 meters. And then around my light, I can see a fishing line with a hook. I removed it, and I threw it away, but I couldn't even see my buddy with who I was diving. And at some time, I just hear him like, okay, what is going on? But what happens, like the hook of the for the fishing just got in his mask, so it's not something really comfortable at that depth. So finally he was able to remove it without ripping the mask thing, and he came back to me, and we just signed like, let's go up. So we never reached the bottom, but at that point it was like, okay, with all the adventure that happened so far, because we had other things bad that happened before, we said, you know what, it's not going to happen today. So we can push it, and we pushed it to the furthest we could. But at some point it's like, you know what, that cave is still going to be there next year, so worst case scenario we will come back. um, but it's always when we take risk. And at that moment, I really wanted to go to the bottom to check it out. Like, is it true? Are we going to find it? Can we find it? Because it's a bit like finding a treasure, right?
Mhm.
Because you're going to be the first one to see it. And there's something on the adrenaline side that we really like about it, to be the first one to see it, to document it. But even if you have that goal, on the other hand, it's like, you know what? We've got that first flag. You have problem with this second flag, third flag. There are so many flags that I are raising about things going wrong, that at some point it's like, okay, are we really pushing it, or just at some point we pushed it to the limit? So it took us maybe 3 hours to come up, and we were, well, we tried, and that's fine. So I think the way I approach risk, and there's a huge difference between danger and risk for me. We can say like places are dangerous, but I think when we say they are dangerous, it's because we don't know them. So we assume they are dangerous. There's an element of danger, but it's more like, okay, what did you put in place to face those elements of danger, to face those risks? And when you're going to face those risks, what are you going to do? And once again, to think about that ahead of time. So for me, it's really walking through the dives, the plan, the communication with other, and making sure that we have the perception of risk and danger, the other and I, as close as possible. Because what I can see as a risk or danger, for the other one, maybe it's like a piece of cake. And the perception, I think, the human element in there is really really important. I when I did my Montreal dive, I studied in hypnosis, in PNL, what is the progro neurologic way of how we think. And I learn a lot through that, like how the perception of one person is really different from the others. And I would like that those elements, and I when I teach, I talk a lot with my student. I told them, like, physically everyone can do it. It's not, maybe it's not going to be the fastest, the nicest, but what do you have in between your two ears, mentally, psychologically? This is what I care about. I always tell them, if you're not flat like this, like on the pictures that everybody love, if you're a little bit like this, but you don't tilt up the place, I don't mind. You're going to work it, and at some point you're going to be perfect. Like everything's going to be adjusted by a quarter of an inch, an eighth of an inch. But if your minding, if your behavior, if your focus is not there, then I have a problem. Because if something is going to happen wrong on the water, it's not your equipment, it's not your techniques that's going to save you. Even if there's a lot of memory muscle to be built and expertise to be built with the practice, but it's what you have in your head that's going to make the huge difference. So for me, focusing on how we mentally and psychologically see the dive and the dive project is really important, is the most important thing.
That is amazing. It's not your equipment; it's you that's going to save you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at all the accident that happened, uh, there are many people who died with top-notch equipment. You look at the pictures; they were like the best professional, but either they didn't know how to use them perfectly, or they weren't ready to do the dive they were doing, which is the worst case scenario. If you're not ready to use properly your equipment, whatever is the equipment, then we have a problem. If something wrong happen, how are you going to be able to handle the situation? And you're doing a lot of cold water diving. Sometimes, like, like those clips. A clip should be that size. This is the size it needs to be. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but you have those heavy gloves, rubber gloves, dry gloves, with underneath a thick glove, and of course you're like this. Your dexterity is gonna be like crap after 45 an hour of dive. So, and you want me to have those tiny clip? I'm not quite sure it's the best option. Maybe that works for some people who does not lose their dexterity, but for most of the people, it's like, what is wrong to use a bigger clip if you know how to use it safely? Why it couldn't be bigger, just slightly larger? So sometimes I'm like, no, to have one rule for every situation, it's just not work. It does not work for me. It does not work. Doesn't make sense.
No, I agree with that completely, and you bring up some very valid points. That's for sure. Absolutely. So, Natalie, what do you think's being done daily to help introduce more women into diving? And that comes from Jenny Brockflower and Branchflower, who happens to be a course director and a dive shop owner in Boise, Idaho.
um I think some years ago they put a lot of pink color in the dive equipment. I hate pink. I just hate pink. But it works. It worked. I mean, I know women who just love to have colors, and I love to have colors, not just that one. But it may look silly, but when you take a product and make it more feminine, it's appealing for too many women. So that, all good. I mean, why not? To not have to wear the same thing as the men. I remember when I started technical diving, I had those jet fin extra large.
Mhm.
It was so funny because I think those jet fin were like two-thirds of my leg length. It was funny, but it was what I had to use, so I used it. So to have all the piece of equipment more adapted to women, I think it's really a nice part. I see, like the Paddy Woman Day in July. It's good. Lots of agencies try to put the woman more, in front, which is nice. So I think that within the community, there is good support, and like for anything else, I think we will still need to put more emphasis on women, and then we will have kind of a balance. And nowadays, I see many, many female instructors, more and more explorers, more and more people putting together their own project, not just being like a team member, which is really great. I'm not, devaluating that at all, but putting their project. So I think we're doing better. Um, and I hope that one day we won't even have that conversation. Because, in a sense, like, we still have to talk about that. Do we really?
It'll be nice when it's perfectly equal. That is for sure. And we've got to
Yeah.
parity. That is for sure. So, Natalie, we all have our role models and mentors. Who was your role model and mentor through this?
Jim Bowden, for sure. Yeah, he was. I remember I did the interview with him in 2005, and it was in a Live Oak, at Bill's Renaker dive shop, in the mecca of cave diving in Florida. And Jim Bowden was there. I didn't know him. And there was all those guys around him and looking at him like he was God, you know. And I was like, who's that guy? He's like, what? You don't know him? No. And they told me about it. And at that time I was working on doing my film Facing Darkness, which was basically demystifying cave diving. So I asked him to do an interview. I wasn't really keen on that. I said, no, it's just going to be really, really, really short. Finally, I put everyone out of the dive store, closed the door, made the interview with Jim Bowden, and he gave me all those advice, which were for him is life lesson. And it's been like nearly 20 years ago, and I still think of him, and we are still in communication because I could I could really feel the value of those life lessons because of what he achieved and what he had to go through after the dive and everything after. So for me, is really one of the person I really take as a mentor. But I mean, on top of that, there are so many people, like people I really appreciate, or people that I'm really amazed with. Phil Newton is one of them. Bill Stone is one of them. There are so many persons. Jill is an excellent example for women as well. And when you go back to history, when you look at the list of the first people who were doing it, when you look at the first woman in the Woman Diving Hall of Fame, and you're like, who is that lady? What did she do? Oh, she was the first instructor. Really? At that time? And then you're like, wow, and the first female photographer. And you're like, it's back then, so long time ago, but they did it like the others, like just a diver. So there are many, many well-known or less known people from which I take inspiration and think about them. Sometimes I remember I was in Slovenia, and there was a group of disabled divers in their wheelchair, and we spent some time together. And I'm like, gee, they they gave me hope, they gave me energy, they gave me motivation, because look at them. They have all the reason to complain, but no, they're doing it. They're diving in the Adriatic Sea, and it's just amazing. I love them. I love them because they are so great example, because they're just telling you you don't have any excuses. Really, you don't have any. So don't try to find an excuse. Just do it. And I love those people. They just wow.
Just do it. Definitely a wonderful model to live by as well. We don't have any excuses. The
Yeah.
only excuses we have are the ones we make up in our own head. Ab-
Yep.
Absolutely. I love that. So, what's the most awe inspiring, breathtaking moment you've experienced while diving?
I think it's diving under the icebergs. Really, it's breathtaking. It's what I love when I dive under the icebergs is like it's so ephemeral. I last week, so you see the iceberg. It was a flat tabular iceberg. So you're like, oh, okay, well, you don't expect too much, and then you go on the water and you don't know what to expect. And as it's been, like 10 times, I go back there, and it's like I discover some shapes, some holes in that iceberg in a way that I never experienced before. And I'm like, what are those? How come I never saw that before? And for me, when I am under those giant of ice that are gonna melt within a couple of months, it's so ephemeral. You cannot put the GPS point in your GPS. I mean, I still do it, which is nonsense because I'm not gonna go back. But there's still a little pattern of where the iceberg gets stuck in that bay. But you don't know what it's gonna look like tomorrow. because the wind, the tides, the current are gonna shape them differently. They're gonna move. The sun is gonna melt a little bit the top, and I love that because it's so huge, and at the same time for me, it's the essence of life because it's the iceberg from which we drink. And for me, the source of drinking water is after air, source of life. So it's something that is just like, oh, there's no animals, well, tiny ones, the jellyfish, the berry. It's just amazing within the column of water. Uh, but those icebergs, all the shapes, how the light reflect on them, the cracks, the blue, the white, it's textures, and for me, it's like uh, maybe the definition of inner space in a way, because you are covered with that huge ice on top of you, and there's that tiny hole through which you were able to go underwater, and then you have that huge piece of ice that is way bigger, way stronger, way it's the definition of how nature is strong and beautiful.
That's amazing. So, what advice would you give aspiring divers or explorers who are just starting out on their journey?
No matter no matter what kind of diving or exploration you want to do, no matter if it's 10 feet of water or 200 feet or 400 or 600 feet of water, always identify why you want to do it, what it does represent in your life. Go to all the lectures you can, read all the books you can, watch all the videos you can to find the all the tools, the inspiration, the tricks, um, and then just do your thing. But take all the information, but not only from diving, from other athletes, from scientists, from artists, and do it just because it's what's gonna give your life the best meaning, because the experience we are living, nobody can take it away from you. Maybe Alzheimer, but at that point, the worst is not for you. It's going to be for the others around you. But you can lose money, you can lose your health, you can lose the material thing, you can lose people, but the experience you're going to have, nothing can take it away from you. So no matter what you want to do it, because it's the best way you can enrich your life. Really. I always say, I'm not going to be the more richness, the more rah rah person. But gee, if I die tomorrow, I will not be happy because I still have a lot of to do. But I can't complain. I cannot complain. I went through so many experiences. I met so many people, amazing people everywhere. That what do you want me to say? I can't complain. But I will not die tomorrow. I will be there again for maybe a couple of years or whatever.
Absolutely. So Janine Sproul is a fantastic instructor trainer and is technical instructor. Works in Honduras. She asked, if you had a time machine, what would you tell yourself as a baby diver if you could go back?
Less doubt, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I went fast, but I would say less shy. I'm really someone really reserved, a bit shy. And yeah. As a baby diver, I would say like, don't be shy. Just go and talk to everyone and ask. Worst case scenario, they will not answer. And yeah, yeah,
Be less shy. I like it.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think we're very timid when we start out in this journey because we feel overwhelmed that somebody's above us, but it's not the truth. They were once where we were at, and we'll be at that another new point as well. We're always growing and learning. We're all just
Yeah.
in different places in the path.
And we all started from scratch.
None of us were born with with jet fins on, right?
Nope.
Thankfully, because they're big.
Yeah.
So you must have a unique and environmental perspective as well. I mean, you spend all this time in the Arctic. You spend this time with icebergs and cave diving. How has your perspective on the environment and climate change evolved through your underwater exploration?
Um, for the past 6 years, we're doing a lot of underwater cleanups of the St. Lawrence River. And when I did the dive is because I wanted to the person in Quebec and in Montreal to be really aware of the importance of really saving uh, the water from the St. Lawrence River. And my main concern was about the emerging contaminant, pesticide, herbicides, drugs, everything that we consume and go away through our waste and go back in the water without complete treatment. Um, I'm really concerned with the environment. Um, I still have some hopes because I don't want to be pessimistic. However, I truly believe that it will not be with new technologies that we will save the problem. We we always take the same way of thinking to save a problem, but we are just redoing exactly the same thing with a new technology. For example, what I mean by that, we're going to replace all the cars by electric cars. Yeah, but it's not better. It's not going to save anything. We're just creating a new problem. Um, so I keep in my year, I keep doing the exploration, I keep doing the cleanups of the rivers. Before I went to the Arctic, I was doing some cleanups with 250 kids from a school that we do every single year. I organize those events. It's not going to save the completely the St. Lawrence River, but when you put together the divers and you gave them a mission, they dive for a purpose of doing something, not because they're going to go to that dive site because the visibility is like this, there's nothing to see, but they're doing it for the community. And I think for me, on an environmental point of view, it's to go back to thinking of us as opposed as we, as I, but us to work together to reduce, and it's not good for the industry, but to reduce what we consume, and go back to reduce, repair, reuse, and sometimes ask yourself, do you really need like the new pair of fin or the new thing? Maybe the one is still worth it. I know there's many industries to feed, but do we really need to do that? And I doubt it. I really doubt it. And I'm pretty sure that the only way to contribute to solving some of the problem is just stopping to use the resources. I mean, I remember when I was working at National Film Board, I worked on an amazing documentary about the wood cutting, the white cutting of the boreal forest. And it was so sad to see like huge field of forest that just disappeared. But now what I think is that, what? It might not be exactly the same tree, but we are still able to grow back some trees on those fields, on where those forests used to be. I mean, some of the soil disappeared, blah, blah, blah. But I mean, you can grow a tree. But nowadays, it's mining. When we're looking for lithium, for cobalt, for all that, it's mining. How can you grow a rock? We cannot. So it's like, oh, okay, now it's like, well, we're gonna do this electrical, the voltaic, the solar panel, all that stuff. Yeah, but we need to mine for that. So I don't know where it's gonna go. Not quite sure. So for me, I'm really concerned about what is going on with the planet, what I can do. There is not one line of solution. That I think there's a lot of compromise. We in what we're doing, we're using a lot of tools that are really energy consuming. But on the other hand, what can we do to compensate, to balance our impact on the planet, and how we can better do it? And what we realize is when we reduce a lot of things, it doesn't affect our quality of life. I think there's a wrong conception that, well, if we don't have this, our quality of life is going to be less. But no, I don't think so. The more you have, the more concern you will be, the more care you will have to those things, to repair, to entertain, to make the maintenance and all the stuff. But if you have less, yeah, you are more free, free of your time, free of what you're going to do with it. I think, yeah, for me, it's really put in perspective how we live and interact with the planet, and in a broader array.
Fair enough. Absolutely. So, what is the most significant lesson you've learned as a cave diver and an explorer?
Um, there is an author that I really love, Jules Verne, Jules Verne. Don't
Hmm.
know if you know him.
Yeah.
Voyage in the center of the earth, I
Hmm.
believe it's called in English.
Hmm.
Um, and I love that book because it's a mix of fiction, fantasy,
Hmm.
and science. And for me, cave diving, diving in those subterranean river of fresh waters, when they are fresh water, it's the symbolic of how wherever we are linked together. So for me, each time I do cave diving, I feel so comfortable. I must say, sometimes I feel more comfortable within a cave than in ocean. I just have to follow my line or put my own line and to go in those galleries. And I feel like in a comfy zone within something that's going to protect me. And at the same time, those freshwater caves, rivers are so important. Once again, it's the essence, it's of life, it's the base of life. So exploring them for me is like the side of life we don't see from the surface, but the side that is more important than the thing we can see. And in general in life, I always ask myself, what is the most important thing? The thing that we know or the one that we don't know? The thing that we see or the one that we don't see? And I'm a strong believer that the thing that we don't know yet, with that we don't see yet, has way more to teach us that the way that the thing we can see more easily. So for me, cave diving is really about being connected, going back to the essence, going back to the slow rhythm of how things have been created on the planet. Because it's like when you look at the stalactite and the stalagmite, it's like a drop of water after a tiny drop of water, slowly building that. It's like it takes for ages. And so for me, yeah, it's all those signification of the value of the preciosity. I don't know if you say that preciosity of the earth, and of what is going on the ground.
Absolutely. It's amazing. So, Natalie, how can we support you in your mission?
Oh well, there's many way. We have a non-profit organization which is called Aqua Subterra Exploration, and we are always looking for partner equipment, support, financial support, of course, to be able to do more, to have more project, more bigger project. So that's the way to go to that website, or just contact me. And well, sometimes we're looking for specific equipment, and sometimes just to learn from others, from uh, problematic that they have in their area, that can be the same that we have, that we can document as well. This is also something really important, like the common sharing of knowledge, the
Mhm.
common sharing of science. So we're always looking for volunteers that have specific skills, not only divers, but sometimes it's people that are doing other things, like scientifically, or others, because like any, I believe, other explorers, we have a big company by ourselves with a couple of super volunteers and friends who come with us. We don't have any employees, or things like that. So it's like working people who are interested in the same goal or subject than us, and want to give us a hand. It's always welcome. So that's the way, basically, we can be supported, like financially, with equipment, and with human resources of passionate people who want to make a difference, basically.
That's great. So, Natalie, what's on the horizon? What's next?
Well, next, as diving, it's to go back to the Manicouagan Reservoir and do those deep dive, to go back to the natural, original shore that is submerged in that reservoir. So the expedition is partly supported by the Canadian Royal Society, Geographic Society, and with other partners. So I still working on putting everything together to make it happen, and we should be there in September, do the dive, and hopefully, finger crossed, be able to reach the shoreline. I say finger crossed because we are really dependent of the weather. It's a huge body of water, really remote. There's no city near that reservoir. There's just a gas station and a small place, like a, not really an outfitter, but a place where people can sleep and do the hiking around it. So that's the huge project for me, which has a huge signification with how we can reconnect together, how we can build reconciliation with the First Nation people, and how we can rethink the future by questioning how we did things in the past. It's not about, oh, you did that wrong, because it was another era, it was other circumstances, but just to try to take a pause, look at how things were done, and how we can handle the situation differently nowadays. And it's going to be a fun dive, because you basically dive in a submerged forest. It's just crazy. I love that place. It's going to be the fourth time we're going back there, and it's dark. It's reddish brown water, and then you arrive on top of trees. It's just amazing. It's so unique, so unique. So I can't wait to be there again.
Absolutely. That's always my favorite dive is the next one I'm getting ready to do.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's no great dive behind me. All the great dives are ahead of me. I can't wait.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm the same.
Natalie, it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to share with us today?
Oh, I think we shared a lot. Thanks a lot for the invitation. It has been a great pleasure to share with you, to talk with you this morning. And well, I hope I will see you somewhere near your where you live and maybe do some ice diving with you.
I would love to do some ice diving with that. Would be an absolute immense pleasure. Absolutely. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you.